So I'm assuming most of you have already done your polls on the Super Bunyan banner, either for her or for the mice, whatever have you. Maybe you just want CEs for the actual event itself, but do not forget that the Friend Point Gacha also has a very powerful update right now. For a limited time, you can get Mary Anning as a free-to-play servant, technically for the event, but she will not be here once the event leaves. I know, it's a very weird concept, a limited free-to-play unit, so make sure you get to polling, and also make sure you stock up on those EXP cards that you get in the Friend Point Gacha, so you can level up cranking whenever you get that max limit broken, because you are going to want to have that done. Now, as far as how good Mary Anning is herself, she's definitely a 1-star servant, to say the least. And while we do have some very strong bronze servants at our disposal, think of someone like Kojiro, who can be very effective. When Bunyan first came out, she was actually pretty solid in farming comps. Mary Anning can be kinda solid if you don't have anything else, but if you're seeing her and you're thinking, wow, an arts AoE Lancer, I can use this as my arts farmer, I'm here to tell you that yes, you can, but it's not gonna be very pretty, as I'm kind of demonstrating in this video, because I really don't see where else you're going to bring her outside of that, because she does have some tools for challenge quest content, but it's not like she's really strong in the challenge quest. Her NP makes her kind of effective for it, and her third skill can be semi-effective in going into challenge quest, but if I'm really being honest with you guys, it kind of feels like this one is a bit more phoned in as a free-to-play servant. Like, they're there, you'll probably level them up, maybe use them during the event for the event power mod, and then probably never touch them ever again, unless you really like Mary Anning, you're just a fossil enthusiast. You grail her up, give her all the gold foes, and then maybe you'll keep using her, right? But that's the case of a lot of those low rarity units. If you're going to use Kojiro, you're probably going to invest a little bit into him. So sit down, strap in, get comfortable. We'll talk about what little there is to Mary Anning's kit and whether or not she's, I guess, worth leveling. But hey, she's a 1-star unit, and Anniversary's right around the corner, and you get bonuses for leveling up units. So at least level up one copy of this servant, at least for the bonuses. Make sure you drop a like, subscribe, all that good stuff, especially if you like staying informed with daily FGO content over here on the channel. But let's start diving right into this, starting off with her hits, where she is rocking what I would consider to be a fairly standard deck. I do wish that NP gain was a little bit higher, much less for her actual natural hits. 333 on all of the different hits is going to be fairly effective. Like, that's kind of nice as far as hits go, and a 5-hit extra attack, I love, as the extra attack is a composite card that gen stars NP and does big boy damage, and having at least 5 is fairly optimal. Obviously you could have more, but beggars can't be choosers on the free-to-plays. But 0.41% NP gain when you only have 3 hits on those cards definitely makes it feel not as good, especially when the NP is also only a 4-hit AoE NP. You can get looping done, it's just, again, not going to be very pretty. And this could have been helped if her skills had a bit higher values on them. I mean, the main skill that you want to level if you're going to be using her for farming is just the first skill, as she does technically have a party-wide battery, quote-unquote, but that's set at a flat 10% rate, very similar to, say, how Waver's buff works. But that one skill pretty much has to carry her through all 3 nodes, and the values, again, are very low, but let me show you what I mean, starting off with her first skill over here. And credit where credit is due, this skill is fairly strong, giving a 15% attack buff, a 15% arts buff, and a 10% NP gain buff to all female or unknown gender allies for 3 turns on a 5-turn cooldown. As far as charismas are concerned, this is not a bad one, because again, for her, it's giving her a little bit of damage from the attack buff, but also raising the NP gain of her arts cards and their damage with the arts buff, and the NP gain itself is obviously very much needed in her different farming setups, because she's really going to need all the NP gain she can really get, playing around with bringing in, say, Nero Bride for even more NP gain, or Waver for the additional just raw battery can definitely be helpful. But I also do really like that this can function as support if you want to bring her to more difficult content, or even if it's just kind of like a more gimmicky boss fight, it's maybe lower to the ground, it's a technical CQ where, it's supposed to be a boss fight, but it's not super hard. You're bringing her for the memes. This can be very good, as all of your supports are generally going to be loaded up with arts cards. Whether it's a Scotty, a Castoria, a Merlin, usually they're rocking arts cards to help your other servants and themselves get to their own NPs, so it'll raise the NP gain of their own arts cards as well, and their raw NP gain as well, in case you find, say, an odd quick card in there every now and then, and that can help them find their NPs quicker, which in turn helps Mary Anning do a little bit better because she's going to be getting extra support depending on, again, what support you're using. But hey, even Caster Scotty gives you attack and crit damage on her NP, so she'll be still contributing to Mary Anning's damage. If you want to be super goofy and for whatever reason use Scotty with Mary Anning. But more than likely, as long as you have the optimal art supports, you're going to be using people like, say, Caskill, who can bomb a bunch of stars, Tamamo, who can lower skill cooldowns, give you HP, and give you NP as well, or Castoria, who can give you solemn defense, attack, and debuff cleansing, all things that Mary Anning herself would really like. Unfortunately, from here, it kinda goes a little downhill. Moving over to her second skill, it's a little gimmicky. This is not bad, because it is a 30 star bomb on a 4-turn cooldown with a little bit of extra damage to yourself, but it can't make her go down, so I guess that's kind of fine, and it's okay, it's whatever. But I guess my issue more so with her bombing 30 stars is what do you actually really do with them? Because it's not like she's a major crit servant, and that's not really what Castoria wants to do, or even Tamamo for that factor. It's kind of nice if you're, say, bringing a waiver for the generic crit support, or if you're going to be using her with Proto Merlin, who very much like the OG Merlin offers a 100% crit damage buff for a turn, so you can do some pretty nice burst crits. But if it's just for her own crit damage by itself, those crits are not super impressive, because I guess leading into the third skill, you can see it's only a 30% crit damage buff, which in the past I have said that, okay, don't knock a 30% crit damage buff because, hey, that's what Morgan has, and Morgan can do really effective crits. But you also got to remember that Morgan is a 5-star with 5-star stats and is a berserker, so she's always super effective, so her crits are always looking really good. Mary Anning over here is a 1-star rocking 5.5 thousand attack, which I guess could be 6.5 thousand if you give her at least the monthly foes or whatnot. But if you're like me, you're probably going to prioritize giving those to some other servant that's not her, because even as long as I've been playing, I still don't have every single servant in my box at least 1k. A lot of the ones that I plan on using and some of the ones that I use every now and then obviously are done, but there's still some just random dudes in my box that might have like 700 HP and like 500 attack buffs, and I'm probably going to prioritize giving them things as opposed to Mary Anning. But even then, doing crits off of a 6.5 thousand attack stat with only 30% is not really going to add that bite to the cards. It might make them a little bit stronger, but you're really going to need more buffs than that to make her really hit hard and be an effective crit servant. But then, at the very least, the other two effects are kind of nice, that she reduces all enemies' NP gauge by 1 while also charging the entire party's NP gauge by 10%. That can be nice, one, for farming. If you need that little bit of extra battery, having that 10% can be very helpful. But two, it offers technical survivability in that you can remove the NP gauge from all the enemies and maybe buy yourself an extra turn, while also supporting your supports and getting to their own NPs, which, again, like I talked about earlier, is just very strong, as most of the support NPs that we have, go figure, are great at supporting the party. And I guess just not to waste any more time, we'll look at her NP, which I do like that it inflicts buff block to all enemies for 1 time for 3 turns. I really like that effect on, say, someone like Jalter. It can be very strong from just denying the boss from having any of their buffs. I think that's a very good buffer to have, but I think they missed out on her only getting a 10% arts buff for 1 turn. I mean, sure, it procs first, but that should be mandatory on most of these stacking effects. You should always proc first. If you were going to have it be a 1-turn buff, at least give us 20%, so it's a semi-chunky arts buff combined with her first skill, because technically, with the first skill, this is a 25% arts buff when it's fired, but if we're doing that, or we're going to leave it at 10%, at least let her stack, man, because Jason can stack. He's another low rarity unit that has the ability to stack the arts buffs on his NP, and that's what allows him to be decent as a farmer, is that even though the first wave can be a little bit rough, because he's not really stacked up and everything yet, but he's really good by the second and third wave when he has a 40 to 60% arts buff that he is effectively stacked while farming. It also makes someone like Muramasa, who I get is a 5-star unit, that's why I was talking about Jason, but it's also something that for him also works really well. Being able to stack arts and NP damage, so he's kind of double buffing himself, and so he's doing more and more damage as the fight goes on. And for Mary Anning, they just, again, I feel like they kind of phoned it in with this one. There is a usable servant here. It's not like she's bad or anything. I can't say that she's dookie dog water, but can't really say that she's super great either. If you were looking forward to us getting another limited friend point gacha unit like Nobukatsu, and you're like, oh, this can be kind of like a fun gimmicky servant to use, I don't even know if I like her as much as Nobukatsu, because at least Nobukatsu has the gimmick of being really good if you use them with any of the Nobu units, of which we already have like 3 of them running around, and we could probably get another one for Christmas or Halloween or whatever have you. And at least from the jump, it's clear this is a free-to-play gimmicky unit, whereas Mary Anning, I don't really see what the point was with the servant, because it seems with the arts buff on the NP and the first skill, how it's built, they want her to be able to do looping and everything, but she does that very subparly. You can get it done, it's just not very good. I mean, most people can get the farming done at this point. But then between her second and her third skill, she could be a really effective crit damage servant, but the crit values are really low, and she just doesn't really have the buffs to be an effective crit servant that's really going to be out there just demolishing people, which, you know, I get it. She's a free-to-play servant, but I think our standards for free-to-plays could be a little bit higher. I mean, the last batch of guys, you know, the bronze people they dropped, you know, that had Jason, Chen Gong, you know, Paris, it had solid options in there. And then even though someone like Gareth wasn't quite as good on launch as she is now, because they obviously buffed her, eventually they did go back and give her a buff, so she's definitely a lot better than she was. And so for a servant that is limited in the friend point gacha, I would have expected a little bit more from this servant, but I don't know, I'm just a little disappointed. But that can also be said about the headlining 5-star unit, so I don't know, maybe that's the trend for the event, is that some things are just a little bit disappointing. But let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Am I being a Debbie Downer? I don't think so. I think I'm just being very realistic. But maybe you could tell me, you could be like, hey, ZTL, at least we got a free-to-play unit at all. You know, something is better than nothing, which technically is true. We could have gotten no free-to-play, so might as well take that. But leave your thoughts in the comments down below, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace, late guys.